Hey out there, it is the Baldy from the Beardy and the Baldy, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a review of the new Justin Lin directed, not J.J. Abrams directed, Star Trek Into Darkness. Got to see it last night with the Beardy, and give you a couple thoughts basically. So, this is the third in a franchise that Paramount has produced, and I'd say the franchise overall is going pretty well. It's one of those movies that they're already talking about a fourth one. So obviously, they're hoping great things for this one. Um, the first movie in the franchise, the 2009 reboot of Star Trek, I actually consider a classic. It's one that I love to go back to and rewatch many times. The way they rebooted the movie itself and the universe itself, I thought was very interesting because it throws a lot of what people know, fans, non-fans, or whoever, kind of throws a lot of things out the window. It makes you go like, well, anything can happen. I mean, they destroyed Vulcan for starters. They have Kirk's father's dead, and on the day he's born, Kirk's father dies trying to save everybody on his ship from a random crazy attack by the Romulans coming through the wormhole at the very beginning of the movie, which was a very amazing and touching scene as far as I'm concerned. You also have Spock's mother dying, which didn't happen on the original series. You have Spock and Uhura being a couple in this one. And, never did you really see Spock with anybody on the original series very much. I know Nurse Chapel had feelings for him and whatnot, but he was always a loner for the most part, other than being the right-hand man to Kirk and part of the mighty triumvirate with Kirk, Spock, and Bones in that way. But I loved how they did it. I mean, the casting on it was impressive. Each one of them felt very much like they were meant to play these characters in one way, shape, or form. Chris Pine, in my opinion, had the probably the biggest uphill battle because of a lot of people's preconception of how William Shatner played Kirk on the original series and through the movies. And he brought something different that made you go like, no, this is his own. He's not trying to be Shatner. The other characters and the other actors, they felt like, here is this character, and we're only focusing on this part of the character. We're not going to flesh them out as much as we could by being on an actual TV show. Which, for me, give or take, that can be one of the things that stunts the movies for me, because they go with the one or two things that you know about these characters, and that's what you're given in these movies, compared to when you're watching a 20-some episode season of a show. You're getting to see these characters have arcs and growth and whatnot. Unfortunately, the new Star Trek movies don't have that, and they aren't able to build the history with a lot of these characters as much, including going into Star Trek Into Darkness, Khan, the reveal of that. The Baldy and I had a bit of a, not an argument, but we had a back and forth about that last night, because I personally was not impressed by the reveal of Khan. I wasn't even interested in the fact that that's how they went with the second movie, because to me it was, let's start something different. Let's go in a whole new level of where you could go with these characters, where you could go with this universe, instead of going to the second movie in this franchise has to go and fall back on Khan, like in the original franchise. This time you don't have a history with him compared to the original series having him show up on Space Seed originally, and getting an idea of who he is, and then creating the beef between him and Kirk. Instead, they take one movie to have this reveal of Khan, which is a reveal that, in my personal opinion, would not matter to anybody, because no one has known who this guy is other than the Admiral, who woke him up to help him create things that I don't know how he helped create them, because he was a genetically engineered person that was cryogenically put to sleep in the 90s, if I remember right. I might be thinking of the TV show, but and the original series version. But there was a lot about the Khan character that just felt ridiculous to me, and it didn't match up with the way Khan was originally represented. It was more the hyper version of that, just like all the characters have the hyper version of that. They're really good at their jobs and they're this and that, and in the original series there were definitely differences, like, you know, they weren't amazing at their jobs maybe in certain cases, but, you know, they made do or whatnot. Anyway, that's setting the stage for this. The question, as always with our reviews on this channel, is it a good movie? It's okay. And I'm really getting tired of doing these solo reviews where that's my opinion, and I just feel like I'm not as excitable as other people might be about it. But I didn't go into the theater being overly excited about this movie. I was just like, let's see what happens. The reason being, every single trailer for this movie gave you hardly anything to go on other than the ship gets destroyed, the Enterprise gets destroyed somehow by an alien race, and they're stuck on this planet, and each of them are kind of on their own in these little journeys trying to find each other and whatnot. They didn't give you a whole setup of what the deal was, though. So in a way, I actually appreciated the trailers giving you so bare bones, minimalist of an idea of what was happening, that you go into the movie actually going, well, what is it going to be like? What's going to happen? Simon Pegg, who plays Scotty, helped to write this one, and I actually was pretty impressed by how this one was written and the amount of Star Trek knowledge that went into this. He really, I forget the other screenwriter off the top of my head, but I felt like he instilled a lot of old school knowledge of the Trek universe and what certain characters should be like and whatnot. He really put that into this movie in such a way where it wasn't jarring to have one of the actors help write this one, and it actually felt almost like a love letter to Star Trek in some ways, and like he made it feel almost like you're watching another episode of the series, and that feeling going into it compared to it being you know, the big tentpole blockbuster in some ways, which probably is why my initial feelings going into the movie were subdued, I guess. It felt like that to me even watching the previews. That being said, I know Simon Pegg went out on social media and through interviews and whatnot, he was really not happy about the promos for this movie, especially the first promo. That the whole promo was nothing but the Beastie Boys song "Sabotage," which a lot of people were like, well, they used it in the first movie with the you know, the kid version of Kirk running away from home, and he's in the car and he turns on the Beastie Boys song "Sabotage," and it's his rebelling moment and whatnot. But here we are watching a Star Trek movie trailer, and that's what you get. It's like a giant music video for the Beastie Boys in a sense. I could see why he'd be mad about that after watching the movie, because that song actually plays a key moment in a vital, huge moment of the movie. And if they didn't already broadcast that on a trailer, I probably would have laughed, but I probably would have clapped, to be honest, because it's one of the biggest eye-rolling moments of the movie if you're going to be cynical about it, or it could be one of the more fun and, you know, just laughable moments of the movie if you're having a good time and watching this and, you know the previous movies or whatnot. For me, I enjoyed the heck out of that sequence. I'm corny like that, and that's just me. But yes, my eyes rolled a little bit just from the setup of knowing that song was about to appear in this movie. The fact that they even used that song at all in Star Trek is funny to me. But I personally enjoyed it because I just thought, you know, if they're going to go for it, they went for it with gusto. And the moment they use it is a moment where it's just like, all bets are off. They need to do something. And that song ends up being not only key to the scene, but key to them creating a victory, which that, I loved it. I can't help it. I absolutely love that part. Um, the two sequences in the movie that really stick out are the sabotage moment, like I'm talking about, and the complete and utter destruction of the Enterprise. That's shown in the trailer. I'm not ruining anything by anybody knowing that the Enterprise is just ripped to hell in this movie. Um, and they've done it already in two movies. They've done in the first movie. It wasn't so much that it was ripped to hell, but it was starting to break because they were trying to get out of the um, gravity well of the wormhole that they're trying to defeat the bad guy using and whatnot. In the second one, it gets ripped up pretty decently because they're on a collision course with Earth through the big plan of Khan or whatever in the second one. In this one, you finally see the Enterprise. It just bites the dust, and it's the equivalent of I made the illusion last night of it's sort of like the cowboy having to shoot his own horse in a sense in the old movies. It's you don't want to see those moments happen, and the difference though is on the original series and in the movies, when you saw those moments happen, they were heartbreaking because you spent so much time with these characters and you spent so much time with that ship being the transportation for those characters, that when you see it in here, you only spent 3 movies with this, and you already saw the damage to the Enterprise in the first one. Therefore, it's a little hard to just sit there and go, oh my god, the Enterprise is getting destroyed, because you've just seen it in the last movie, in a sense. The way it's done is pretty horrific, though, and I love the fact that they are completely not sure how to deal with this. The enemy comes at them with this like hive bee-like mentality where they just all just come at you, and there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and they are just obliterated. And you're watching the crew just go into these jettison pods, and the way that whole sequence is, it is heartbreaking to watch the crew just, they have to give up. And you're watching the crew trying to leave the ship, the pods are jettisoned, and some of these hive-like bee drone thingies that are attacking the Enterprise actually grab those pods. And the villain in the movie, Crawl, he's using people in order to further his existence. So at first you're like, so, are they okay? And it turns out, no, these people are actually goners at this point. That was pretty heady. It actually reminded me a little of, if you play video games, Mass Effect 2. They have the collectors in that one, and they have them just like going around and just turning people into husks for the video game. Now, it wasn't quite on that level, like the people weren't converted into anything to further the bad guy, but it did make you just go like, these people probably are goners. It's it is pretty rough to watch that moment, and it's one of the moments where Chris Pine's Captain Kirk actually he is raised to being a mature leader, because you can see he's not happy about this, and you can see he's not even sure how to handle this, but he knows his crew is dying. And I actually thought they did a really good job of elevating him from being the brash rebel into more of a seasoned captain in this movie. As for the rest of the cast, Simon Pegg gets a decent amount of screen time this time around. I think it is because he did help write this movie. He's the character that Scotty's the character that ends up finding Jayla, and she is a survivor of Krall's attacks and whatnot, but she's also screwed by, she's stuck on this planet herself, and she's a survivor, but she has no way of getting off the planet, so she's doing what she can so that Krall can't find her and whatnot. She's all right. I mean, honestly, she's a character that it would be fun to see in other Star Trek movies, but completely divorced of anything from the original series. And that's one of the things that I was hoping for. They're bringing in characters and bringing in new races and whatnot of aliens that you've never seen before, and this is a good step forward in that way. As for Carl Urban as Bones, as Dr. McCoy, he gets a bit more screen time, and he's definitely got more to do in this than he has in the last two movies. So it feels like they're trying to punch up some of these characters that haven't had a lot of screen time compared to others. In this one, like Uhura and Sulu are kind of like they're pushed a little more into the background versus Anton Yelkin's Chekhov, Scotty, and Bones. Those guys get more time to shine in this one compared to the previous incarnations, which was nice. Although I will say, going into the untimely death of Anton Yelkin, it was hard to see him on the screen a lot, being Chekhov and knowing the poor kid's not here anymore. It was nice that this is obviously his final performance as Chekhov, and in that way they do give him much more to do. He ends up being paired with Kirk when they land on the planet, and what's nice about that is because it's Kirk, he does get more screen time because he's just there with him, and the two of them are trying to survive and whatnot, which is good. They're actually, at the end of the movie, there is a nice moment where the crew is assembled together in order to celebrate Captain Kirk's birthday, and it's a day that he doesn't like celebrating because of the events of the first movie, where his father gets killed on the day of his own birth, but he's surrounded by the crew. He's surrounded by his family. And Justin Lin being the director, it is the whole, it's family. It's the Fast and the Furious mentality in that way. But you have a moment with the whole crew, and he raises his glass and he says to absent friends. And after he says that, the shot goes to a shot where Anton Yelkin's Chekhov is like front and center in the way that the shot was set up. And I thought that was a really nice nod to him. I don't know if they did that intentionally before the tragic accident happened, or if they, if that just is the way that they plan to do it, and then it just, just by horrific luck, that's the way it worked out in life. I don't know. But I personally got a little bit of a chill watching that part and going like, that was a nice nod. But you also have, they also nod at the fact that Leonard Nimoy is no longer with us as well. And that is actually done in a really nice way too. And it's the first time, if I remember right, in the new rebooted universe of Star Trek where they reference to every single crewman who was the original group of the crew for a lot of people. And they have a crew shot of Kirk, Spock, Bones, Uhura, Sulu, Chekhov, and Scotty from the original cast. And that was a nice moment for me to see that too as well, because Zachary Quinto's Spock gets to mourn Leonard Nimoy's Spock in a way, just like the fans have, and it was really nice how they keep doing those kind of moments in these movies with respect towards the previous actors and with respect towards the original material. So let's see. Story-wise, like I said, it's not really a convoluted story until it gets into who the villain is. And the villain, me personally, I actually was kind of depressed to know that Idris Elba was the villain in this movie. He's an actor who I've come to really enjoy in most things he does. He's someone who, he has this charisma and he's got this likability that makes it hard for me to even view him as a villain half the time. I always want to see him as just kind of like the good guy, and whether he's brash or whether he's sensitive is just, I like seeing that version of him more. And he is behind makeup through 95% of the movie. It felt really weird to do that with an actor who possibly could have brought in even more people who enjoy his work and see him on the screen without having caked on like alien face in front of you. He does a pretty convincing job though as Crawl, and it shows he's somebody who he has been prolonging his life, so it's messed with him a lot. So when you see him talking to people, there's really these moments that it looks like he's having a real difficult time because there's something completely wrong with him and the way he communicates, the way his sentences work, and just watching his mouth trying to form sentences after a while at the end of the movie, it's really it's almost like he's deteriorating in a sense before your eyes, even though he's getting younger before your eyes. And I enjoyed that level of it, but I thought about it watching the movie, and it's hard to watch Star Trek and see the villains being constantly pissed at the Federation. The Federation is supposed to be a peacekeeping force, in a sense. I'm actually having a flashback to Hot Fuzz where they talk about the police force and the way he views they should be talking about it versus what other people are saying. But the thing is, with the Federation, it's weird. It's weird to me because it's the Federation has been targeted in all of these movies for one reason or another, and there's nothing where it's anything personal beyond the Federation did this, the Federation did that, and it's like I can understand that there would be factions of people, or there might be splinter groups or whatever of people who don't agree with the Federation, or they're not on board with it because of their past history or whatever, which in this case Idris Elba's character is one of those people. But it kind of undermines the sense of them being a humanitarian and peacekeeping anything. I don't know. It just, I guess there's always in the minds of the people of today, because of what we go through in life, in the world, and the terrorism out there, and the groups of people who aren't getting along, and all this different stuff in our period of history. I think there is sort of a cynicism to, yes, it would be nice to reach the levels of Star Trek that are bright and unifying for everybody, but I think there is a certain amount of, they don't believe we're going to get there because there are always going to be those people who want to pull us back into the darkness, I think. I guess, I didn't find that to be too horrific of a problem, but I did just kind of go like, this is turning into like the Marvel movies now, where we get a one-off villain, they get taken care of in one shape or form, and we move on to the next thing. It's a little bit of franchise fatigue at this point for me, I think. By the time you reach a third movie in almost any franchise, I usually have fatigue about it, because I love the first movie because it brings me something I haven't seen before, or it brings me something in a way that I find fun. You get the second movie, and sometimes that can be bigger. Empire Strikes Back, Dark Knight for some people, and Spider-Man 2 is an excellent case. But then in the third one, you kind of hit that, like, we already know what the deal is, we're okay with this, and then you end up petering off with a franchise. This one, Star Trek Beyond, does not peter off in those ways, which is good. It's actually a really strong entry into the Star Trek franchise, but I feel like it was trying to almost apologize for Star Trek Into Darkness, and just have it be like, here's Star Trek, and we're just leapfrogging over Into Darkness to say this is Star Trek Beyond now, and this is the way we meant to have the series go all along. It would have been great if this was the sequel to Star Trek in that way, to be honest. Beyond that, I think I liked it for the most part. It's not one that I'd need to watch multiple times. It's one that kind of, it shakes up the formula they already created. It kind of has a front and center of characters that, like I said, they haven't been really front and center in a lot of these movies. Scotty, Bones, Chekhov, that's great. And the characters that have been more front and center, Uhuru, Sulu, Spock, they kind of get pulled back a little bit more in service of those characters, which love it or hate it, it is what it is in this, because you have, what is it, 7 cast members you have to keep bringing out there, making them interesting and whatnot. And always friend and center is Chris Pine's Kirk, and once again, you know, the guy proves he's got this. He is, for me at least, he is the Captain Kirk in the movies, and Captain Kirk in the TV will always be Shatner to me. That's the thing. The direction from Justin Lin is actually really kinetic, really visually it's exciting. The action sequences will keep you on the edge of your seat, I feel. There's some visuals to really show the scale of these fights they have to go through in this movie that I actually was very impressed by. There's one sequence where they have a starship and they're showing the wave hive of this bee-like, the drones that they have coming after them, and it's like a huge tidal wave of these things about to crest on top of this tiny little ship out in space, and that was beyond all you needed to know about what was about to happen, and it was done very well. Even the way that like established shots for scenes begin, they have it like you're not just here's a flat shot. You're coming in and it's kinetic, and the camera will bend its way into a scene, and it will like almost corkscrew you to get you into a certain moment and give you the environment and the atmosphere going on and the actual scale of the environment you're about to go into. And I thought that was actually kind of fun, to be honest. It brought a different level. The lens flares even weren't that big in this one, I noticed. It was the last two were way more lens flare heavy. This one was more just action and, you know, movement heavy and whatnot. And I actually thought it added to the feeling of Star Trek, and it added to like the idea of flying in and floating in space and whatnot, and kind of keeping that in the back of your mind that it's like the adventure and it's space and it's, you know, there should be that kind of feeling to it instead of these static shots, which actually Star Trek has not been doing a lot of, to be honest. But it was showing you Justin Lin is making this his own, and it's not done distastefully at all. It's done actually very well. But yeah, I thought the movie was okay. I don't really have any ideas on how I'd want to see it better. But one of the things that they did do in the beginning of the movie was they showed kind of like a day-to-day life in the Enterprise. And I gotta be honest with you, there is a part of me that would like to see more of that in these movies, and they don't have the time to do it. I wouldn't mind if they did something with that in the 4th movie even, now that they're developing that one. They've become these big action movies and, you know, shoot 'em ups, and there's a lot of explosions and whatnot, and sometimes maybe having the quieter moments are the better options. Like, it was actually nice in the first one where they had the quieter moment with Spock after Vulcan got destroyed and whatnot, and you don't really have a whole lot of those moments in this movie. It's a lot of the plot moves along. You're not being kept in one place for too long. You're not giving a lot of moments to even be bored. But it's still the 3rd of a franchise for me. Like I said, the 3rd is where I kind of start petering out on me having an interest in a lot of these things. But going forward, if Justin Lin is the director, and if they want to keep Simon Pegg on as a screenwriter, they're in good hands. And it could be really interesting to see how more of these movies would go if they keep going in that direction. But anyway, yeah, so Star Trek Beyond, it's a decent movie. If you want to check it out, I'd say go check it out this weekend. It's worth a shot. It's not one I need to own right away. It's not one that I think I'm going to go back to a huge amount, but I'm glad I saw it. I like the fact that they had a dedication at the end to Leonard Nimoy, as well as they had a little, just 2 words show up after the dedication to Leonard Nimoy and said, "For Anton." Again, nod to Anton Yelkin's unfortunate death recently, and I thought it was all done in a very sincere way, to be honest. But yeah, so Star Trek Beyond, It's an okay one. It's another one out there in all of the summer franchise movies. It won't disappoint you, but it probably will give you enough to go like, okay, you know, you're feeling like this is the third of a franchise at this point. So there you have it, and I hope to see you next time.